Hello, everyone. I'm the head of engineering at YLD. And a few months ago, Zé decided to step down from Zé and his team to step down from hosting this meet, from running this meetup. And I felt like I had to volunteer and to take that responsibility. It took a lot of coordination to get this first event running, but I'm very excited that everyone is here and that we're starting it up. Some of you might be new to this community, so I wanted to give you a bit of an introduction. Recare is now more than 10 years old. Even the name is old. We should probably rename it to Import LX or something like that. So how the new kids use it. It has always been an event run by the community, for the community. It was a passion project started by people that wanted to share their knowledge, wanted to create a safe environment for everyone, and to learn from others as well. It was born out of the early Node.js excitement, but it was never bound by Node.js. We talked about everything: robots, infrastructure, WebGL, front end, anything really, and other transpiled languages. We even did a bunch of workshops and especially a lot of Node School events. I don't know if you remember this, but Node School was a global initiative to it was a pre-built work that you follow through steps, and it was organized as engineers to volunteer and to give these workshops. In 10 years, we did 30 events of Node School. So imagine the impact that RequireLX had on the Lisbon JavaScript community. It's always an organic community, an organic meetup. It gave voice and a stage for people that never tried to give talks. A lot of people that started their careers almost at RequireLX. And we want to keep doing that. We want to keep having new voices, new ideas, new audiences. That's something that we want to foster. And we wanted to call this one Back to the Future because this is the culture that we always had, and this is the culture that we want to keep having. Since its inception, there has been almost 40 events at the YLD offices. And YLD has been connected directly or indirectly to every single people that run this event in the past and currently. We want to keep that. We want to foster this community. We want to keep it open and vibrant, and that's why I felt like it needed to keep happening. We are a software engineering consultancy company. We do a little bit of everything. If you want to join us, feel free, reach out to me, talk with me, I'm around. But we don't want to own this community or this meetup, this event. We want to be guardians, but not own it. It's still a community event. We want it to be a community event. We want others to join alongside and to help run it like Volkswagen is doing today. Thank you for the sponsorship. Yeah, if you want to participate, talk with me. We want to do at least, but ideally more, but at least event once a quarter. We have a bunch of ideas for the next event, but reach out to me or to Victoria or to both or anyone. Participate. You're more than welcome. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Bode is going to be the host for today, so give him a warm welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, sorry for the delay that we had, but you know, like how they say about wines, you know, the longer it is, the longer it is, the sweeter you get. So I just want to just thank you all for coming here tonight. Yeah. This is an amazing turnout, and like Sergio said, my name is Bode. I'm one of the software engineers from YLD, And just before I go further, I want to introduce our sponsor, Volkswagen Digital Solutions. Thank you for them for offering the space. So yeah, so if you want to,
Yeah, sure.
do you have everything microphone set up?
I don't. But
You don't? Okay.
Always nice.
Go. No, okay, we're good.
Can I use this one?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is expected, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, but I can do it like this and
Yep.
yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I will not bother you for too long. Maybe if I think this year is a bit more less awkward, at least for you, for me it's the same. So to give you a bit of context, my name is Rui Martins. I'm the head of marketing and communication at Volkswagen Digital Solutions. I will keep it very short, but just to give you a brief context of the place you are in. So have you ever heard about Volkswagen Digital Solutions? Some of you, yes. Okay, some of you, no. Have you heard about Volkswagen? Okay, this is a more... Okay, that's a great start. So Volkswagen is a huge company, right? Is a company that has more than 600k people working all over the world with lots of brands associated, from Volkswagen to Audi, Porsche, Lamborghini, Ducati, Bugatti, Skoda, Seat, lots and lots of brands. We are a Portuguese company that belongs to the Volkswagen Group and that develops software for the group. When I say that we develop software, we develop from applicational software to sales after sales, human resources management, and even software for vehicles itself, for a specific brand called MAN, that is the trucks and buses. If you go in Carris, around 70% of the Carris fleet is MAN trucks. Yeah. So we are divided in 3 tech units, kind of 3 departments with specific aims and specific goals, and we are in 3 different offices. Okay, this is one of those offices of one of these tech units. This tech unit is called SDC. Rita, that will talk later, she belongs to the SDC tech unit, and she will talk a bit more about this. And we have other tech units, one more focused on development and prototyping of some projects, others more in kind of support and more mature phases of projects. And the other is mainly focused in one of the brands that is MAN. So most of the software developed is aimed for fleets or for trucks or wherever, okay? So this is the basic context of Volkswagen Digital Solutions. We are more than 450 right now. We are expanding and we have lots of opening positions. So if you guys are interested, now is the shameless plug. Please visit our site, our LinkedIn. Feel free to ask wherever you want. After this, if you want to chat, feel free. I will not bother you any longer, so enjoy the rest of your conference. Thank you.
Thank you. And just before we begin our first talk, there's some of necessary information to give out. Fire exit. It's behind you. We have it's under the yellow sign. And we have the Wi-Fi password. So if any of you need to log on to Twitter to tweet out how amazing this event already is, you need a Wi-Fi password. There's capital T, capital Y, and capital H. And it's 3, 2, 1, and explanation mark. Yeah, and then the schedule of the event will be. So now we have our open doors and intros, and we will have our first talk soon. And after each talk, after the first talk, we'll have 10 minutes of QA. And then after that, we have our second talk, another 10 minutes of QA. But then after that, about 8 p.m., we'll have our break with food and drinks in the back. And then lastly, the third talk, and again, 10 minutes Q&A. And we'll try to wrap everything up at 9 p.m. So without further ado, I want to introduce to our first speaker, which is Rita, and she'll give us the talk about accessibilities and test-driven development.
Where was it? Please hold while the technical problems continue. Oh, see? Made of paper. It's fine.
Tomorrow on the news.
Yes, that one I would like to have here. Yes, please. All good. All good. Don't worry. Go with it. YOLO. No. The other one.
No presenter though.
I think that
It's fine.
getting me ready.
Yes. No touchy. Let's go. Welcome. Sorry for the delay. Let's hope it goes well. First things first. Hello, my name is Rita. And next. Yes. Not that many nexts. Yes. My name is Rita. As Boda and Rui said, I work at the SDC here in Volkswagen Digital Solutions. And amongst you people, we have people who have worked in the SDC, people who work in the SDC, and who knows, people who might work for the SDC. About me. I'm a geek at heart. I'm also the mother of Pedro. He's 4.5 years old now. So everything comes together very, very, very well. Why? Because he likes Legos, I like Legos. We tend to get along quite well. As of the pandemic, or after the pandemic, I started cycling to come to work because the subway was packed, we didn't want to use masks, so nowadays I tend to have the bicycle as my main means of transportation, which is very cool. To wind up, I also like to paint. I paint a lot of mandalas. They take away the stress and they keep me focused, and it's something that I really like to do. And this photo was from about a year and a half ago. It was taken on the balcony of the SDC, and it showcases the amazing team that we had at the time. This is the SDC. As Rui said, this was something that that was created in 2018. Volkswagen was trying to branch out and to look for new places to set development centers and technological hubs, and Lisbon was one of them. What brought me to the What brought me to the SDC? I already worked with test-driven development in my previous company. I was a bit tired of the flow that I had there, and so I was looking for a different challenge and to do something that I haven't done before. And among all of those things that I've learned some things about accessibility and test-driven development. So today, I would like to tell you a little story. This is baby Hercules. He's a 0 when he was born. And this is big Hercules from Disney. And he got from 0 to hero during the movie. What I would like to tell you today is the story of how you can go from 0 to hero when it comes to accessibility. How? Well, let's get the topics running. Test-driven development. It is by definition, how you transform software requirements into test cases before you code any line of software. This is the definition, and we usually call it the merry-go-round. You'll get to see why in a bit. Accessibility. The definition from the dictionary, it is something that can be easily used or accessed by people with disabilities, or that is adapted to be used by people with disabilities. And when you think of accessibility, you usually think about ramps and stuff like that. But are ramps just for people in wheelchairs? Do any of you have babies? Babies? If you have babies, you probably know that ramps are really, really good. Are babies people with disabilities? Hell no. Accessibility means that things need to be able to be used by everyone, literally everyone. And what gives more about accessibility? It is grayed out. I hope it's still good, because it isn't grayed out here. We shall see. Accessibility. I don't know what's the level of knowledge of you folks. So one thing that I learned here is that accessibility, and usually when you Google it for accessibility within web development, you'll find ALE, A11Y. It depends on how you wanna type it. And it is, by definition for web development, it is the capability of enabling as many people as possible to use the websites, even when those people's abilities are limited in some way. I would tend to scratch the second part, because it doesn't really matter if you're limited or not. Things should be able to be used by everyone. And this is very important, and today is the 4th of July, which is kind of funny, because why should we bother? Why should we care about accessibility? Well, for us in Europe, it's fine. For people in the States, it's mandatory. You have to be able to comply with accessibility for your website to go up. So we're a little bit far behind on this here in Europe, but we'll be getting there. Test-driven development. A little bit of context, and to try and give you the overview why I think this is something that really matches in a good way. Test-driven development, how I came to know it and to use it, was using this book. At the time, I was developing backend applications for data processing systems for mission planning. So satellites would go up, they would process their data, they would send it the other way around. Satellites would go up, they would acquire data, send it to Earth, and we would have to process it. So it kind of really needs to be what we were expecting. So test-driven development came for me in that sense. And what is it comprised? So you'll start with, as we saw from the definition, you'll start with a test, a red test, something that is failing miserably and that you will absolutely go nowhere with it. But you will write the as few lines of code as you can to make the test go green. And this is a good thing, because it will make you just write whatever is necessary to make your code work and to make your application functional. If needed, you'll refactor because you have this safety net of the tests, so that you don't screw up with your code. In a nutshell, this is what test-driven development is. For today, because I don't want to bother you or to give you a very complex example, and you'll probably say, yeah, but I know nothing about accessibility. I'm at 0 point. Okay, let's start from 0. Let's assume that we know nothing. We are very noobs, and we know absolutely nothing. Let's see what we have. We have a form, a very simple form with a photo, with some input fields, and with a button to sign you up. So if you were to translate filling up this form into some sort of a test, you would go into something that would look like this. We open a page. From the logo, the image that you have there, you'll see, okay, we are in the right place. We are signing up for Require LX. Good. Within the page, we'll try to find that section for the personal details. If more sections existed, you would also go through them. We click on enter your name, not enter your name, you would click on first name, you start typing, then you tab to go to the next thing, keyboards, right? Don't need to go for the mouse, you can tab. And we'll fill the surname filled up. You'll tab again, and eventually you'll find the button that has the sign me up text, and you'll click on it. And this should be the happy path for your application, for your dummy form. So how do we start? We start with a test. We'll write some very simple test, something that is very, very bound and very basic, let's say, but it will suffice to give you the pointers that I wanna give you for you to take away and plant the seed in your head. A test. I want to have a test that says it has the title for this element in the UI. It has a title and it has an input box. Okay, how do I make it work? A classic view of us. Okay, let's go. We will have, yes, we will have a title and an input. We'll have a title. Within the HTML, let's find a paragraph that says some random title, and let's find the input field that has the value awesome. When you run it, it fails. Yeah, it fails because duh, I already have something here, but it should have failed. This should have been returning null. Apologies. Why? Because come back, yes. It's failing, not because it is returning null, but because we do not have the text input. So we'll have to go bit by bit, piece by piece, implementing the things that we need. And as such, we will have a paragraph and we will have an input with this. Within the UI, it will look as we intend. There will be a text and there will be an input field. But is it good? Is it something that we wanna have? Meh, meh, meh. Why? Did the other one? It did. Is it something that we wanna have? Meh. Because we'll need to start compiling things. We need to have, okay, we have the input field, but we also need the button, and we'll also need eventually the first name and the surname. So let's start building up things and putting things together. And it is a form. So if it is a form, I will probably want to have a first paragraph with first name, a second paragraph with last name, and then a button with sign me up. Okay, well, good. It's returning null, so you start with the very basic thing, the simplest thing you can do, and it is failing. Yes, we know the test-driven development, hence the merry-go-round. Let's give the test what it needs to pass. Okay, there's a text input, and there's a button to sign me up. Okay, we should be good because the values are there. However, there are two paragraphs. How do I know, the test, how do I know which one is which? I'm just going for the query selector. Okay, maybe I need to change this assertion. Fine. I'll get all the paragraphs. And I know that the first one is the first name and the second one is the last name. Good. Green. Cool. Let's go on. However, this is us here in Portugal, where we have first name and last name. What about countries that use last name and first name? This will make a change. And if this makes a change on the way you perceive your application, your tests probably shouldn't fail on account of that. So if I'm just very, very naughty, and if I get here, and if I change this, and I switch the order of the elements, my test is about to fail because I changed the order. But your tests, they should be robust to these type of details. So at this point, we have a good reflection to make because we, the developers, we're probably the only idiots that press inspect and then we'll go, okay, it's a paragraph, yeah, cool, it's a paragraph. And it's the first one, yeah, cool, it's the first one. People that are using this form and people that will be filling out this form, they will not do right-click inspect. They will look at the text and see what's written there. So only us, the nerd people, we do this. So this segues into the testing library. In particular, because this example is built using React, the React testing library. And this is one of the biggest quotes that I would like you guys to take away is, the more the tests that you make resemble the way the users are using your software, the more confidence the tests will give you. And this means that, okay, if I'm looking at an input box, I'm going to find an input box. If I'm looking at at a button, I want to find a button. And within this ecosystem, you have very specific queries. And these queries, they will help us to refactor that test that we had. So instead of having the query selector for all the P's that has the 0 or the 1, and then we change the order and we screw everything up, I don't care about if it is a paragraph, a heading, a div, a span. I don't care. All I care is that there's the first name, there's the text of first name within the screen that I'm looking at, and it is in the document. There's the last name, and it is in the document. And more importantly, there is something with the role button that says sign me up. And with this, we enforce and we start slowly and bit by bit introducing accessibility within our tests, because you're giving semantic meaning to the elements that you're using. Speaking of that, we have a get by text first name and get by text second name. But there are labels. Labels are probably the best thing that was ever invented, because you get to know what things are. You get to know and clearly identify what is what. And in this case, for HTML, you have semantic labels, or you have semantic within your elements. And there's a very specific element, the label, that represents a caption for something, which means that instead of looking for some, we can go back to the text input, and instead of looking for some random text, we can look for a label. And the React testing library gives us this query for get by label text. So you will find an element with a very specific label. And this will pinpoint within your application what are the elements that you have. The test fails, you give it a label. For the field name, there is an input that is associated with it. Okay, you get to connect the strings and you get to connect the dots for what you're doing. And putting back the emphasis on the test-driven development, why? Because you have these queries, you have this framework that empowers you to do and to develop your code using accessibility at heart. There are plenty of queries. I'm not going to bother you with all of them, not by any chance. But another good example that you can think of, there was the image, and we had the image there for the require LX. Okay, how do I find it? You can say that there is a test that says it shows an image to identify what you're signing up for. And in that case, yeah, I want to find the alt text for the meetup logo. Very good. It fails because there is no image. Fine, of course it fails. And then you give it an image with the alt property. You've probably heard about screen readers and that they will help you to identify the things that you have in your application. Yes, but more importantly, they will drive, or the alt text as another property or another attribute from the semantics of the HTML, they will help you and they will help the users to identify the things that you have. And even more, if, as it is now, as I showed, yeah, sure, it's not great, but at least you know what you should be getting here. You don't have a random and a broken image without anything. So it's not much, but it's something. And this is something is totally on purpose. If you start with a few elements, if you start taking the alt text, if you start taking the labels, if you pay attention to the roles, you want to click on something, it's a button. It's not a div with the role button and with an on-click. It's a button. Elements have meaning, and please use them. It will help you, and it will help the people in the future. The example for this form will be, I will make it available here on GitHub. What gives? I promised you'll go from baby Hercules to super Hercules, right? No, you'll go to teenage Hercules, because you'll get to know that, okay, there's a path, we can do it, we can go through it, and eventually we can go the distance. We can take accessibility, use test-driven development, and go the distance and start maybe translating the happy path for filling out a form using only accessible elements and the testing library. So that was what I intended to show you. Thank you very much, and that's it. It's not a
Thank
mic.
you.
I'm sorry, it's not a mic.
Yeah, I can pretend it's a mic.
You can wait.
Yeah. No, I won't do that though. I have mic here.
You have a mic.
Yeah, I
Oh,
have mic.
congratulations.
Yeah. But can everyone hear me? Do I have to scream louder? Okay. We also have a live stream, going on at the same time. So really, the mic is for that. But yeah, thank you, Rita. Yeah, thank you so much for the talk.
You're welcome.
Yes. And now, does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Me? Yes. What?
Oh, yes.
Kubu.
Yes, we
Yes.
have a.
The cube.
I'm about to throw this at you, okay?
Yes.
Are you a good catcher? 'Cause I'm a bad thrower.
Boom.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yellow.
first of all, very cool presentation. Thank you very much. I love Hercules, the movie. So I hope I one day become a full Hercules myself.
Exactly. Exactly.
So my first question to you is, okay, you're showing like React testing library, which really helps us doing writing the test and also test accessibility and application at the same time.
Mhm.
But can you also recommend any other tools that can also help me assist on the accessibility of my code?
Yes. You have a few plugins for React, for instance. You have ReactX, which is pretty much like ESLint, but for accessibility. However, in my experience, it depends on the level that you want to configure it and on the level that you want to be nitpicky. Nitpicky, it's not the right word, but on the level that you want to invest on accessibility. So ReactX, definitely, if you really want to go on an American way of, we need to compliance or death, but it's a good way to start. And I think the React testing library or the testing library, because it exists, since this is require.lx, we're not only bound to React, we also welcome other frameworks. There are plenty of favors for the React testing library. For instance, if you're doing end-to-end tests and you want to go on the same approach as you were with your unit or integration tests at the level of the front end, you can also use the Cypress testing library. So you will have the same type of mindset to, okay, where is the button that says something? Can I click it? Where's the heading for this section? So the Cypress testing library, I think it's also something that at a higher level helps you to promote accessibility. But then again, it is within the umbrella of the testing library family. But linters, yes. And an exercise that I think it's really funny is to put your code through a screen reader. It is hilarious because one of the things that we used to do and we used to bear in mind is, okay, for the descriptions, for instance, for the alt, let's use snake case or dash or kebab case or whatever. And then when the screen reader reads it, it's just stupid. There's no sense in it. So use something that helps the users. Always put yourselves in the position of the user.
Can I do a follow-up question exactly on that?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Sorry,
Don't mind me.
monopolize here. But so because so the writing the test, right, is like during testing time, and then the linter is static, right? Your code is being analyzed. But now during runtime, let's say with applications on the browser, do you know of any tools that can really show you, hey, okay, your application has these accessibility errors? Because indeed, like what you're showing there is like the semantic part of the HTML code, but accessibility is much more than that, right? Like it's like the visual contrast example that you just showed, and then the code cannot cut or
True. I remember from last year on JS Nation, there was a very good presentation on a couple of websites that allow you to show and to see the color contrast and to find a good balance within your design, let's say. I don't know the link by heart, but I can Google it up or look it up on my notes, and I can share it on an aftermath of the presentation. Something that people usually ask, it reminded me, do we really need, can we test for everything with the tests, or do we need to rely on visual testing somewhere? I think it's a balance, but the more you can test with your tests, the less you have to test manually. So I think it's a good compromise to get as much as you can from automatic tests, and then just leave what the human eye is for what it is. And then you have to choose a good human eye, because you can have people that are colorblind, and then doomed.
Thank you. And just one last curiosity. Last month was the Pride Month, right? But this month is actually Disability Pride Month. So I don't know if you knew that.
I
Right on the trend.
I didn't. Score.
Okay, so it's,
Who can I throw this to now?
yes. So, anyone else got a question? Okay, maybe you can take your time to think of a question. I'll ask another one.
Out of practice.
It's okay. My question is, so, as a software engineer myself, I find myself splitting my time across many different tasks. Sometime front end, sometime back end, sometime DevOps, sometime business meetings, agile trainings. So like I feel like if the time we spend on testing is very limited, and we have to find the right balance. Otherwise, we might just spend all of our times writing tests. So where do you draw that line between developer productivity and and perfect coverage?
First of all, perfect coverage, I think it's an illusion, because you can have perfect coverage and your code application can still be not good. Okay? Imagine, for instance, a getter and a setter. You can have unit tests for a getter and a setter on the back end, and it gives you 100% code coverage. What's the value of a unit test on a getter and a setter? Not much. So on that end, perfect coverage is something that requires a balance. On how much time do we need to spend on the tests? I would say as much time as you do spend on the production code, because the tests will give you a confidence and they will give you a safety net to write the production code. Because you can go wild and crazy and write a bunch of lines and write a bunch of components, a bunch of functions, all of your application without a single test. And then when you start testing, or when the bugs appear, they will appear out of the blue. And then you'll have to go, oh crap, where was it? Okay, let's Command Z until a point where you thought it worked, but then it didn't, and then you added something else. It's not as trivial as it used to be. So for me and for this team within the SDC, the tests are a way to leverage and to increase your productivity, because you will only write the code that needs to be written to get the test working. And the fewer lines of code, the smaller the probability of introducing a bug. For sure, there will be bugs, don't get me wrong. And for sure, you will get a call here and there saying, hey, come on, it's not working, help. Legit. But the fewer the lines of code, the less the probability of getting a bug.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
test-driven development and the lean methodology, they will help you with that. So do only what is required to make the test pass. Even if it is return true, okay. But then if you do a return true, right after that, you'll need to find a case in which it will return false. And then your logic will start piling up from the bottom up. And not from, okay, but what if it is true and what if it is false and what if it is true in some cases and then false in another? Don't worry, the tests will guide you. The tests will make you write what you need.
It's about like your personal judgment taste as well. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I've worked with both frameworks. I've worked in an environment in which tests were run and built and executed at the end, and by that time it was too late. The satellite was already up there, so you couldn't do anything. You couldn't send an astronaut up there. No. Everything needs to be validated before. Everything needs to be configured up front. So in order for you to be able to do that, you got it.
That, like back in the 80s, 70s, the old school programmers, the one who's actually making spacecraft, they would spend 20 years, writing one program, because once it's deployed, once it's on the launch pad, you can't go back and rewrite your test. So we, today's developer, we're
so lucky.
we're kind of
We are so
spoiled.
lucky. We are so lucky. We are so lucky.
Our code, we have to fix everything, but if you put out your mindset,
It's like, okay, I'm launching as a spacecraft. I want to do the best I can
Yeah.
because once it goes production, it's out of my control. But if once you adopt that kind of mentality, then you will see that testing is more, TDD is more for your friend than your enemy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there is, segueing on that, there is not a problem in having a red test. There is no problem in having a failure. The failure is how you learn. Okay, it's not working. Why is it not working? It should be working. So you'll go and you'll find a way to make it work. And this is valid for front-end development and for back-end development.
Okay, another question. Afonso, catch.
Okay, thank you. My question is, and maybe it also correlates with your question a bit, which is, do you recommend using Cypress and tools like Percy to take visual snapshots to evaluate the visual aspect and visual accessibility, but at the same time considering cost of using those tools?
Cypress, yes. Visual testing, it depends. Because for different, imagine the example of the first name and last name. If you were to, and the example of the first name and last name, in one of them you had first name before and second name the second. What is the value of your software? What is the value of your form? It is for you to sign up. It doesn't matter if the first name is the first element of the array or the second element of the array. It doesn't matter if the designers decided, oh, we don't like this in a row. We want to put this in a single, or the other way around. In a column, we want to put this like this. The functionality of the, or the main goal of the application, it is still fulfilled. It doesn't meet the design criteria. But that is probably where the visual inspection will go. So by default, I would say no. What is most important is the functionality of your program. But of course, people will be using it. So eventually, it will have to come into play at some point. And you can only deploy and you can only go live with something if it has been approved by someone. We all have continuous integration and delivery, but somewhere down the line, there is a little bit of a hatch in which we say, stop, it's not ready.
We've been using Percy actually for a bit of that.
And
it has been a good experience catching regressions mostly, because a person cannot look at everything.
True.
And Percy has been able to catch some of those regressions without even us, the developers, so if anyone wants to try it, I like it.
Thank you.
okay. Yeah, I think that's our
First talk. Thank you again, Rita.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey everyone. So at SingleStore we have been trying to draw some insights from usage data and adapt our application, adapt our onboarding, and I've been working on the growth part of the product and try to create new features for the trials and try to get a better experience for the users. So today I'm going to share with you some lessons learned and some what I wish I had known about front-end user tracking. I'm Marta. I'm a software engineer at SingleStore for almost 3 years. And SingleStore is a cloud-native, highly scalable database. We power mostly data-intensive applications with transactional and analytics workloads. And jumping on the talk, I want to give you a grasp of our analytics stack. So for the context of this talk, we are going to consider our two applications. They are our SingleStore website and our SingleStore web app, which is the cloud portal where users can create databases, manage them, and run other workloads. And both applications connect to Segment and through Segment to other services like Mixpanel or Google Analytics and a bunch of other services. And Segment, we use two different sources of Segment, but it's actually the same account, so we have everything together on Segment. It is a customer data platform, and it really eases our integration flow, and we only need to care about the Segment integration and not worry a lot with the other integrations. So this takes me to my first advice, which is, of course, if you can afford it, because it is a bit expensive, use a tool like Segment. It has been a lifesaver for us, and I can only tell you good things about it. My second one, and as I was telling you, we have two applications, and one application has a sign-up process, so we have the usage information or data inside, and the other one is just the public website where we have our documentation, where we have pricing pages, product pages. So I can tell you that it's really useful to track the whole flow as just one, and we can do this even if we can do this using a segment feature. There are also other tools that allow you to do this, other segment competitors, and it's called Segment Anonymous ID. So basically, if you don't use any of these features, you have a bunch of users navigating on your website, and since you don't have a login process, you can't track them. So if they are back on your website, it would be a new user for all effects. Once they sign up, you start using a unique ID, and you can track them when they are back. You can have an analytics dashboard for the pre-sign up, and you can have one for the product flow, but not all together. With Segment's anonymous ID, it creates an anonymous ID on the client side, and it is saved on the client side. And once the user signs up, it just associates all the events that were done before the sign up with the information you have. So now you have a completely tracked journey, and you can see, for example, which pages the user has visited before converting, and you can have a bigger picture of the whole flow. Of course, this just happens for the users that signs up, that sign up. The others are still unknown. So this way you can have only one dashboard with the whole flow and correlate all the information. Then my next advice is to build a library with your analytics code from day one. We didn't, and we regret it. Because we have a lot of code on our shared component library, and we can't use it as a standalone library, and it would be very useful to do something like npm install. You have your library, and you can use the functions, the track functions that identify the ones you need, and it would be very easy to not have dependencies. Then, when you're building this API, this library, if you can, my next advice is to make the tracking API as simple as possible, because let's face it, it's not a priority for every developer while they are implementing the feature to add analytics, and they are easily forgotten. So, if you have an easy way of tracking events, the blocker is going to be way lower, and it will be very easy to track everything. Of course, you need to find a balance here. If you want to have a set of events very structured, or if you want to have a structure defined that you need everyone to be compliant with, you won't have an API as simple as this. But at least for us, we are OK with that, and we allow just one ID and a bunch of properties. So we end up with a lot more events that we can track than if we were asking developers to do way more than this. And if you don't have a structure, or if you allow the events to be almost anything, my next advice is when you are reviewing code, take a look and look for analytics, because as I was saying, it's easy to miss them, or maybe if they are there, maybe you want to suggest better naming, because the name is also very important. You may suggest other properties or other things that you might find important to log. And even if you have a feature release checklist, add it there to be sure you're not missing. We don't have a checklist, so we always rely on the code reviews. And then, hopefully, everyone tests their code. So the events can also be tested. We use the events debugger for this. Segment has a tool for testing. So basically, you can interact with with your application and see all the events being logged in real time. You can see the name, the properties you're logging, and it's the perfect way to check if you are logging everything at the right time with the right interactions and the information you want. So Segment Debugger, it's a very powerful tool. So I recommend you to use it. And now you might be wondering, okay, but if I test my local code with all the events, wouldn't it be messing with my production code? And the answer is yes, if you have everything together, and no, if you have a dedicated source for your local development. What we do is to have a segment source for local dev and a source for production. So we make sure we can log as many events as we want. We can change the name, and there's no problem with that, because we know that they won't be mixed with production data. And as I was saying, the name of the events is very important. Try to keep them consistent. We have a prefix that is logged in all events, and it's hidden on our tracking helper functions. And that is very important, because anytime you need to change the event, the event naming or the properties naming, you're not losing the data, but you're losing the power to correlate the data very easily, because you no longer can create a dashboard where you track one event from 1 month or 2. You need to split it because the name has changed. And it's very bad when we need to do that because the insights are no longer as clear as they could be. And yes, you will end with a lot of events, a lot of names. We have tried to keep them all together in a spreadsheet, and it doesn't work. As you might guess, it's a very manual process, high maintenance, and it was often outdated. So we gave up on that. And even if you want to know which events trigger a particular flow that you want to analyze, you probably wouldn't know just by looking at a spreadsheet, because you don't know which is the action that triggers a specific event. So what we do now is, again, to use the segment debugger. So if you want to build a dashboard for a flow, you can just mimic the flow and copy the events and build your dashboard for it. So you don't need to be always updating. It reflects production code, and you know that it's always updated, and it's reflecting the flow that you really want to analyze. Next, more about the privacy side of analytics. You can't track users who haven't accepted analytics cookies to be GDPR compliant. Unfortunately, we still lose about 30% of data because of users that don't accept the analytics cookies. But again, you need to do it to be compliant. And my best advice on this is, if you can and if you're able to, if you're having any question of if it's personal identifiable information, or if you don't know which data you can log, always try to reach out to a legal person in your company. They know what you can do, and try to keep it there, because these are very sensitive matters. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you have a lot of data, a lot of events, if you don't build anything with it, if you don't build dashboards or draw insights from the data. So I want to cover a little bit about that as well. We use Mixpanel, which is a tool to create dashboards and boards and charts with the data. So Segment logs everything to Mixpanel, and then we build some dashboards on it. So this one, for example, is for our sign-up trend. It is an insight chart. You can have linear charts. You can have bar charts, pie charts. So you can choose according to what you need to analyze. You can also have funnels, and this one is my personal favorite, because you can have you can define a flow and check if the users are dropping off in the process, if they are finishing the flow or not. You can break down, for example, this one is for an onboarding checklist where you have different IDs. You can break down by IDs. So these are very useful. Mixpanel allows you to build other kind of boards as well, but insights and funnels are the ones we use the most. This is the work view. So you can just choose the events you need that we usually copy from the segment debugger. You can choose the filters, the time range, and build your charts. The filter we use the most is the employees account. We exclude single store accounts from the data to make sure we are not biased by looking at testing, even in production when employees are testing features. So we remove all the data. And then you can create cohorts as well, like trials, like training. So you can exclude them or analyze the data just in those cohorts. And my next advice is, and I wish we could take this earlier, is that organize your dashboards and boards because things can get very messy and you don't want to get to a point where you don't bother to look for the dashboard, you just create a new one. And you can also leave some annotations in the chart. So this is very useful to correlate shipping dates, feature shipping dates with the charts and see if there was any change if users are engaging differently. So it's really useful for your analysis. Next, if you don't want to use Mixpanel or if you prefer to run your queries, Segment supports some official databases. Other tools would do it as well. Unfortunately, SingleStore is not official yet, but we use a SingleStore DB for that. We have our in-house code that copies the segment events to a database, and then we can run our own queries against the data. So these are my 10 tips today. I hope at least one is going to be useful on your future work. And that's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mara. Anyone have any questions? Yeah.
Hi. First of all, nice presentation. And for the slide where you mentioned to not bother storing the event names in a spreadsheet, do you recommend doing any other sort of way to store the event names, or at least having a shared types in the shared library, just to avoid like being too coupled with segment, or you don't like recommend this? What is the approach for that?
Yeah, we don't keep track of all the events naming at all, because I think the only use case we had for that was to build the dashboard. So as I was saying, it's easier to go on the debugger and track the flow you want to analyze. You can keep the types, but you will only duplicate information. So I don't think there's a really good use case for that. At least for us, it doesn't make sense so far. So we just use the debugger.
Okay.
No problem.
Hello. You didn't mention anything about split testing, but do you do it?
About?
Split testing or multivariance testing. For instance, when you release a feature, you release on the main branch, or do you test it with a specific segment or?
Yeah, we usually use feature flags for that. Feature flags. So we apply the feature flags to organizations that we want to test, or we use the employee mode, but we don't use any other testing.
Hey. So let me tell you a horror story. One day we had this feature and it was like failing all the time. And when we went to check the code, what was happening, it was the tracking code that was having issues. So we came to the situation where, oh gosh, we have all this tracking code that is breaking our production feed that we really want. And eventually, first thing we just deleted that code and stopped tracking, and then we had the up and running. But then we developed other strategies of avoiding this issue, but it was very limited to the library that we were using. So my question to you is, so Segment, do they provide their own API, I believe, for JavaScript and maybe other languages? And how good is your experience, in your opinion, in terms of avoiding this kind of problems? But also another one is, what happens if the API that is calling is also having issues and then it's delaying your code, let's say, because of the tracking stuff that you're running, it's making your application run slower. So do you have any examples or tips for that?
I don't think it ever happens to us, the tracking being breaking our production code, at least so far. Yes, Segment provides JS library, so you have a node package, and it has been working greatly for us. We have our own functions implemented, and then we call Segment API, so we are always using we use that kind of short line analytics.track, and inside the track function we have all the logic that calls segment. So at least so far I don't have any horror story to tell you, and our experience has been great. As far as for the delays, I don't think we ever experienced delays that affected our code either. So, yeah.
That's very good to hear.
Yeah.
We're going back.
Yeah.
From rule number 3, to keep track since day 1, what was the cost of not keeping track? I assume losing data, but okay, maybe losing some data it isn't critical, but...
The build common analytics library. We were tracking. My advice is to have the analytics code as a standalone library, because we have our code in the shared component library, and for example, if we have a simpler application like a playground or something like that, that we don't want to use the whole shared component library, we don't have the analytics as a standalone library. So my advice is to take it and build a library with that part of the code only, so we don't have any dependencies.
But from what I'm thinking, you want to track how many times the user clicks a button. So you need to attach something to the clicking of a button.
Yes.
How do you decouple?
Okay. We use something like, we pass our tracking functions up to the shared library. So basically when we mount our application, we call a function like init analytics service, and we pass up our tracking functions. So the shared library would always be using the services of the client project. So even if you have different projects that use, one uses segment and another uses any other thing, you can join them together and send the tracking function, so you don't need to bother with that on the main, on the shared library. Okay.
Hi. I want to follow up on his question regarding the spreadsheet and going into the debugger and then creating dashboards out of it. I noticed that on the spreadsheet you had a lot of meta regarding the events. So when you track that on the debugger, you lose all that meta. Because when you go into a dashboard, you lose a bit of context probably, or maybe you had a column with sample values and stuff like that. Maybe you lose some relevant information. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think the cost of having that information was way too high and was not worth it. So at this point, I don't think we missed that that information. We had a lot of columns with data, but when you're trying to analyze the data, you don't need much more than the event and the properties that are being logged. So I think what we lost with the spreadsheet was not worth all the maintenance and all the manual work.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Any more questions?
Yeah, it's a bit more of the same, more related, like with the naming convention of the events and all this, and the spreadsheet and all this. It's like if you have an event that maybe it's exactly the same action, but it can be triggered from different places of the UI of the app. Like, what naming convention would you recommend, or would you put it as a property in the place where it was triggered from, or how would you organize it?
Usually if we have the same event triggered in different places, we have properties like element ID or some kind of ID that we can track. So we still use the same name, but then we change in the properties the ID or any other thing. The example I had here, it's actually the same event being triggered in different places, but it has a different ID. So you know that event is the same, but then you can break down by ID and have all the information as well. Okay.
I want to kick out, I don't know why, but yeah. No, it's a really good talk, yeah. Yeah, because like, for example,
my first job before I start programming was actually a data analyst. And what that meant was actually I was working on the business side of things, and we were coming up with frameworks and specs, and coming up with like these namings that you mentioned. Like, we were the ones coming up with what funnels to track, what namings to give to developers, and what key metrics we should care about. So that was my first job, and then I moved into software engineering, and then my colleagues, they were all complaining about analytics. Like, why do we keep getting tickets like this? And I was like, I've been to the other side, and I'm like, I think it's really important for the entire business. So as developer, so sometimes it's to switch your mindset to the other side, because when during my time as a business analyst, these namings and these datas are really kind of like the only things that the business people they see. Like developers, you see the code, you see the performance and inspector tools, dev tools, so you feel like you know everything. But people on the business side, they don't see anything, and they really want to know like what is going on behind the scenes. I mean, so these data will help them to make better business decisions, and then in return, they will also, so if you keep some key metrics like clicks or conventions or like or even like money, and then the business people will take these data to make some decisions that will eventually impact you at the end of the day as well. So it's really good because at the end of the goal, everyone's trying to move the same target. Everyone's trying to move the company forwards. So yeah, so this is really important. Yeah, but yeah. So thank you. Okay. So that wraps up our second talk. We'll go on to a break now, and we have food and drinks in the back, and hopefully we'll come back here maybe 8:20 for our third talk. Okay, thank you. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Hope you enjoyed your social network and the beers and drinks. Yeah, so sorry we had to bring everyone back earlier because we want to, finish our last talk, and then we can go out there again and drink and socialize, and this time without a rush to come back in. So without further ado, this is our last talk. Well, here's the title, and take it away, Afonso.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Afonso, and today I'll present to you how to create micro frontends using Astro Islands and ECMAScript modules. And soon you'll find out that actually this title is kind of clickbait, but oh well, you gotta make it. So, require LX, but actually there must be an NPM injection here because I'm actually from Porto and drive all the way here. So, okay, so yeah, I'm Afonso J. Ramos. You can find me on GitHub, LinkedIn, .me domain, and whatever. And yeah, out of the office, probably you'll find me at music festival or, I don't know, browsing YouTube for random things. Yeah. So what makes them micro? What does Mondrian have to do with anything? You mentioned eczemas. What? Can I go on vacation to an Astro Island? These are the questions that you might be having. Maybe not. I don't know. But let's go over the history of micro frontends first and settle these things once and for all. Okay. So who has heard of microservices? Okay. Yeah. Almost everyone, right? Okay. So it all starts with a monolith, right? Your product is getting bigger and bigger, code reviews are getting harder and harder, and scaling issues are starting to show up. And that's when you decide to start opting into microservices. Why? Well, because on microservices, this meant that your backend started to get split up, business logic got centralized to each microservice, and you have basically a database per microservice sometimes, sometimes not, but it all works towards a specific business goal. So this meant that updating, testing, deploying, it all happens within each service, and each team responsible for each service is personally, or not personally, but the team is responsible for this whole process. And this meant that the major business got decoupled into more domain-specific concerns and independent code bases, which is good, as we've all figured out now, right? So it doesn't mean that it reduces complexity. If anyone tells you that microservices is the solution, I think that this year actually we've had quite a few examples where maybe going too deep into microservices is actually a bad thing. We've had I think probably 3 months ago, Amazon post saying that they were moving off of microservices, but in reality, it was actually like a microservice that was working for a microservice. So it depends, right? Okay, so what does this have to do with anything? Back to micro frontends, right? I don't think I cannot talk about micro frontends without talking about Luca Mazzalira. He kind of coined the term, if I'm not mistaken. We, YLD, actually have worked with Luca, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and he actually works at Amazon right now, and they have their own microservices
platform, which works very differently from the ones that I'm going to talk about today, but it can be considered better, but again, not all solutions fits all the problems, right? So, okay. What he always said about micro frontends was that it was the technical representation of a business subdomain. So I guess that using your correlation powers, you can kind of understand where it relates to microservices, right? It all serves the same purpose, to represent these business subdomains into specific buckets, let's say. So who uses micro frontends? Google, Airbnb, Atlassian, Netflix, Microsoft, a lot more. Okay, Volkswagen, yeah. A lot of people, a lot of companies, not people, because you'll soon find out. Yeah, a lot of companies use micro frontends, and you can already tell that this is like large companies, maybe companies with thousands of employees, like Volkswagen, right? So why is that? Okay, let's take an example just to like zoom out a bit. Okay, let's see at Airbnb. Yeah, sorry about this. I took a Portuguese screenshot. Yeah, don't worry about it. We're just looking at the UI today. So we have pointer. Yeah, we have the Airbnb site, right? Okay, and this is just the listing page. Okay, so let's see. How can we divide this into micro frontends? Any ideas? Yes? Header. So like the full header. Yes. Okay. Any other? Yeah?
Down from the header, the search bar would be one micro frontend, as would be like the little dot on the top right with your face on it, for instance, and so on, so on, so on.
Yeah. So, yeah? You have a different?
The grid of images.
The images themselves?
The grid.
Oh, the grid. Yeah. So, yeah. So if you think about what I've said before, right? We want to divide into business domains or core products. So I'm not sure about this division. I don't work at Airbnb, but the most likely division that they did was, wrong button. Okay, the most likely one that they did was search. So you have a team dedicated to search, and I've worked with search before. You truly need a dedicated team for it. Account. And this is just like product listing. Maybe the filters could be a separate thing as well, but well, we're just guessing here, right? So who's it for, right? I've talked about Airbnb. We've talked about it works on big companies, but let's take a look back into what works for who. So. From left to right, you have complexity / company size. Complexity, I mean of product, and company size, yeah, self-explanatory. So maybe if you work at a startup, all you want to do is build fast, break fast, present things to the user. You want to pivot as fast as you can, and we all know that if you're working with microservices, you're already working at a somewhat big company or medium-sized company. But like if you're working on a startup, it's better to just start with a monolith and just break things up when you start growing into maybe a microservices with a monolith front end. Why? Because microservices clearly start giving you a bit more power to scale, and because you're starting to feel the scalability constraints, but maybe you don't need to go into micro frontends yet, right? Only when you start having these issues with a really huge code base, a lot of employees, a lot of business goals to attain, and like if you have a full company working towards just one front end, you're starting to divide things up already, right? But if you're still contributing all to the same repository, and you have like let's say that you have just one repository for everything. I'm forgetting the name for monorepo. Yeah, thank you. If you start having a monorepo, if anyone has worked with a monorepo before, you know that code reviews are hard. It starts getting complicated. Sometimes you need to have validation across multiple teams. Maybe you just have the LGTM and you're good to go. It starts getting a bit out of hand sometimes. Monorepos are not for everyone, but they do work, but they're not for everyone. So maybe that's when you start considering micro frontends, right? So essentially, what it allows you to create is end-to-end scalable teams, right? So you can have a full team dedicated to the whole account business domain. So that means that the team completely, so this obviously works mostly for full stack developers, or full stack engineers. Obviously, you can still have the division between backend and frontend, and have frontend devs and backend devs, but you still have a lot of connection between the frontend and backend because it's just the one connection. If you're connecting with like 4 teams at once, it starts getting really hard to maintain those relationships. And in the end, if you have a really, really big company, sometimes it's not the tech problems, it's the people problems. And it's not even it's human resources scalability, not even tech scalability. So micro frontends try to work with that and improve that a bit. So how is everyone doing these micro frontends? Right, I could talk about server-side composition, edge-side composition, client-side composition for micro frontends, but let's focus on client-side composition, which is what most people are doing, and the other solutions are more like products that you use, such as the AWS one that I mentioned that Luca Mezzalira is involved in right now. So if you think about it, the iframe was kind of like the precursor to the micro frontend, right? You had a little window that you reserved for something that ran somewhere else, and you just point at it, and that's kind of what a frontend is, right? But like the most popular one that is being used today is Webpack's Model Federation. Model Federation, again, works with Webpack. A lot of web apps work with Webpack. You can have Webpack work in almost all of the frameworks that I know of. But we all know that if you work with Webpack, it comes with a backpack. And that backpack is full of complexity, right? So what I'm going to present to you today is an alternative to Webpack's Model Federation that does not have a backpack, or at least if it has a backpack, it's kind of hidden from you, and you don't need to deal with it almost at all. So how I'll do it, right? So one way to reduce this complexity in our micro frontends is to simply compose these ESM ECMAScript modules and using import maps while taking advantage of these global CDNs for packages. And you basically also use Vite and Rollup, but Rollup is kind of built into Vite for production, so you actually don't need to worry about Rollup, but it's something that you it's good if you're aware of it, because it helps with the tree shaking and the common chunk splitting and lazy loading, things like that. Maybe I'll go into what an import map is a bit, because it actually is like a pretty new thing, and ECMAScript modules a bit as well. Import maps, as you can see here basically allow you to define in a JSON where the keys are for the ESM module names. So here, React, this one is just a link to the React ESM module. Another benefit of ESM modules is that you can also version them. In this case, I didn't version them because I was just working with latest, and yeah. But obviously, that if you work in a company, you'll need to start versioning this, and yeah. And you can have like multiple versions as well. So that's also good for transpiling and bundling. And then ECMAScript modules are kind of what allowed us to do these static imports. And it also changed a bit how JavaScript was run. If you've ever worked with package in specific, like a package that worked in React or something, and you previously built for CommonJS, and suddenly, yeah, you have to build for CommonJS and ECMAScript modules. It's actually a nightmare to build to both. There are some things that, I mean, not now maybe, but like 3 years ago, probably there were a lot of packages that made you use require instead of import. So require LX had to be done instead of import LX, right? But now you can import almost everything, so that's fine. So let's go into demo time, okay? Hopefully nothing breaks. Let's see, this is kind of laggy, this screen. Okay, so maybe I will go into the code base first. Okay, so yeah, the brightness, zoom, yes, zoom. Enhance. Okay, yes, enhanced. Okay, so we are looking now at vite-config.js. So this is the config file for Vite in app A. App A. So I have two things actually: shell and packages. This is just because I have a PNPM workspace just to facilitate how I run things and install things. So we'll first look at packages. So this is app A. I've built app A using Tailwind and React. And if I go into, I think this is the app A one, yeah. Can I zoom this as well? No. No. Okay, I will tell you what I'm doing. So if I am developing, I just run pnpm dev, right? And I go to localhost 3000, which is opening here. And once it loads the first time, this is just like a pure React, I don't know. Oh, okay, there we go. So this is just React with Tailwind. It's just a card that I built with React and Tailwind. So let's go back in here. Yes. So in here, I have vite-config, right? As we were looking. And what I'm doing here is I have two plugins, React and CSS inject. This basically allows us to inject the CSS through JS, which means that we will be outputting our own application into a bundle.js file. What this means is that if I, instead of do pnpm dev, I run pnpm build and pnpm serve, yeah, so build and serve, I will not have this anymore, and I will start having in actually a different URL once it finishes. OK, I can start running these as well on the rest of them. OK, so then if I go to this, I cannot get slash because that's expected. Wait. So because if I write bundle.js, I will start this. OK, it has a lot of things because it has Tailwind, this one. And for some reason, it's not tree shaking. Or maybe it is.
That's tree shake.
Yeah, that's tree shake for sure. Yeah, yeah. So, whoa, OK. OK, so yeah, we output to bundle.js in the format of ASM, right? This is actually changeable, but we want ECMAScripts. So we're doing the same in app.b, which is also React. But the surprise is that in here, this is actually solid.js. It looks very similar to React. I'm not handling state in these ones either, but it is solid.js, right? So once we go to the shell app, right, we have, this is Astro, and so this is where Astro comes in. And this is, and it is Astro that allows us to work with multiple frameworks at a time. So I have the import map here that I talked to you about before. So React and React DOM are necessary in Astro as an import map. Not Solid because Solid is a bit more lean and doesn't work with a virtual DOM, but that's another story. And this is the layout component. We also have the index, which, yeah, CSS is mixed up. And you'll start finding here React component A, React component B, Solid component. OK, these are Astro things, client directives to tell Astro if it's a client or server-side component. But let's not worry with that. So if I want a component B, let's say, all I need to do is actually super easy, right? You actually saw a bit of that over there. So I just import micro front. It doesn't actually matter what I write here. What's important is actually HTTP. 7001. Oh no, 10,000 slash bundle.js. And now I just const micro frontend A equals no or, and now I can just React. What did I call it? No, yeah, micro frontend A. And now I just export default, yeah, save. And now if we actually, actually let me write the wrong URL for a second there. So if now I go into my, nope, yes. So now this one is within the shell, actually not in the shell folder, but I have a pnpm start shell. This is basically run dev. And now if I go into, yes, this browser that is beautiful, and close this and go here. And so here you can already see that we have 3 cards. These 3 cards are all coming from different places. So this one is the React with Tailwind that I showed you before. This is the Solid.js one, and this is a native Astro component. And so if I correctly put the URL here now, you can reload. Oh, right. This is actually micro frontend B. My bad. So that's why it wasn't working. Whoop.
Don't you have two variables with the same name?
Yeah, you're already declaring.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my bad. So let's just go for microphone there. Yay, so okay, now we have, this wasn't supposed to be, oh, because I'm, yep. So this is actually the front end A. The other one is this one, yeah. There we go. Yay, React with Chakra UI. Okay. Okay, so basically, and this is an advantage of Astro. If you inspect these, each of them comes with their own CSS, with their own JS, and they are Astro islands, which at this point doesn't mean much to you, but it's basically what allows Astro to be so performative for content applications mostly, because basically everything is kind of sort of a independent thing, and it's only loaded once it is within Vue. Yeah, but this is for another time. So essentially, there are still a lot of costs that we find with using micro frontends, namely state. How do you share state between a solid component, React component, or application micro frontend, right? It's hard. There are solutions. For example, Astro themselves already suggest one which is NanoStores. It basically saves your state within local storage. It's a solution. Then you have the team building problem. You need to build these teams that have expertise in all of the fields. I'm not sure if you've tried finding full stacks, and you can find full stacks, but it's hard. And sometimes no one is like truly a full stack. Someone always sacrifices a certain area of expertise towards the other. So it's always hard to find someone and like doing this team building, like yeah. And then you have a lot of overhead, right? So these are. It's the client that does this call separately to the micro frontends, which is not bad. They are independently deployed, and so like you still have some advantages towards that, because you with Astro you only load once it's in Vue, and but yeah, basically you still have a lot of advantages there, but it does have some overhead in terms of configuration, things like that. And if you're working with model federation, you have even more things to worry about because it's more on the component level as well, and it depends. But yeah, and then breaking up teams, because as I said, you don't work with micro frontends from the start. You have to work with something and then start breaking up. And that also raises the point that you also have to break up the code. And yeah, migration's kind of hard to do. Yeah, but there's a lot of benefits as well, right? So team freedom, you're more independent. You have more control of the whole process, deployment, etc. Technology. However, this is like a double-edged sword, because yes, you can work with multiple frameworks, but there are disadvantages, such as sharing state. For example, if you were working with, which you can, with a fully React, for example, micro front end, it would be much easier to share states across these components. So there it is, a double-edged sword. So, but they still can like opt into a different UI framework, and yeah, and it's not all in the same code base. So it still helps. Product scaling, yeah. Faster build time because you're working with a smaller code base. Maintainability and fault isolation, smaller code base again. And fault isolation because if it's failing on one side, it's just on that side. And you can just, yeah, that's your fault, just your fault. And autonomous teams, autonomous teams. Deployment processes are their own. If one fails, you can also like implement fallback components for these situations. For example, I know some companies that use micro frontends versioned, so you have a deployed current version and a deployed previous version. So if the current version takes too much time to load, you just go back to the previous one. So, or if it errors out something, yeah. So, yeah, thank you for coming. This was my talk, and yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that talk. Any questions?
Sure.
Yeah, you first.
Go for it.
Okay, thanks. Great presentation as well. I never worked with micro frontends, but I was wondering, do you have to host or serve the bundle files in live production? Is that just for building time?
Yeah, so you have to serve them. Well, in ECMAScript modules, yes, you have to serve the bundles. With Module Federation, it works a bit differently. Maybe Rita can talk more about it. I don't know. Maybe not. Oh, you unveiled from Module Federation. Yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. A lot of companies have. You have to serve as well. Yeah, you have to serve as well. So yeah, because you're still working. But again, it's a micro front end, so the bundles should not be too big, and you're sharing some of the dependencies through the import map as well. So there's not that much loss there.
Okay, thanks. Hey, cheers. Thanks for that. That was actually pretty cool. Astro was awesome. Been using it for a while. But I wanted to ask you like a very simple question. Are you familiar with single SPA?
Single SPA, yeah.
Yeah, because it solves exactly the problem.
Yeah, kind of. And this is another potential solution to micro frontends. Again, I've mentioned that I was talking about.
But yeah, I mentioned like because it's there's a lot of extra code on top, specifically for the state sharing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So just.
Yeah, and if you read through the Astro documentation, they actually do mention a single SPA and point it as a potential solution. Yeah, thank you. For the Rita. Yeah.
Perfect. Two things. One more broad, and another more to poke a little bit. If you're using Astro, you showed the HTML, so when we inspect, we can see that that web page was built using Astro.
Yes.
Or is that something that only happens for the development build? When you go to production and you go live with it, if I right click, I can see how.
I mean, you can, with most frameworks, you can see what was used to build it, actually. Okay. With Astro, I guess it's more viewable, yeah. Because if let me see if I still have it open. Yeah, like you have, this is for the Astro Islands in specific, but like, these are the classes as well. So there's a lot of things that are Astro specific, but you can run away from that. But but a lot of frameworks already do this as well.
So how do you communicate between Astro Islands, for instance, When you were giving the example of Airbnb,
Right.
let's assume Airbnb was built using Astro.
Right.
When you click on a filter from one micro front end, how does it propagate to the other? Is there communication between the micro front
So
ends?
that's what I meant when I mentioned state. Yeah.
Okay.
So you have it's.
But why is it state?
Why is it
Have to
state?
be state?
Does it have to be state? Yeah. So it doesn't have to be state, but
If it's
like.
state, then
Right.
probably it means that the boundaries of your micro front ends, they are not clearly defined. Maybe
Well-
you're leaking a little bit, maybe you don't have your business logic
Yeah,
that very
but like-
well defined. This is the pokey one. So
Right.
why state? Why do we need to worry about state in a small application?
I mean, I think state is very important, right? And if you've working with an application that does not handle state very well is kind of hard to reproduce. So if you have everything in state, that's kind of a benefit, right?
It's a trade-off, isn't it? It's a benefit for some.
I mean, yeah, it's yeah. But again, this is more of an issue when you're handling multi-framework micro frontends. If you're working with a single framework, it's easier to handle state still, or props.
Again, if you're working
You can pass props, by the way. You can pass props to the components.
Okay. But if you're using the same framework in the different micro frontends, are you not breaking one of the principles of the micro frontends thing?
Well-
which is to give independence to the teams to choose their own technology and to be autonomous in their.
You still need and that's why there is a shell app, right? You still need a parent to
Exactly.
tell you what you can or cannot do. So, yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay.
Even the URL is state.
Yeah.
True. True. And you can get most of the things, or maybe you can get some of the things that you need from the URL. For
Yeah.
instance, with the filters.
Exactly,
You
like-
can have the filter parameters as.
Yeah, exactly.
There you
Like,
go. You don't have to
but
say-
that's still state, right? It's state saved in somewhere else.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair
Yeah.
enough.
Like,
No.
you keep like a shared state?
No, wait. I just wanted to poke the discussion now. No, it's up to you.
No, I can kind of bring a real world situation. You can have like a shared state, and for sure it should be as small or as possible, because you don't need a lot of data to be shared, but you need some. Probably you need some information about the user around the application. That is preserved.
Yeah, but
then you can also have states within each of the microfrontends.
Exactly, because there's a lot of state that is not global or doesn't need to be.
So yeah, it's that. You have to share stuff.
You have to share something.
Yeah.
Like just to poke a little bit more. No, the thing is, if the different micro frontends don't talk to each other, what use is there to have multiple micro frontends? Then you don't need something as complex, right? The whole point of going for something like this is that they need to communicate somehow with another part of your global application. Users are obviously the classical example, but like the Airbnb example before was perfect. Search and the results for search, they were behind. They were not the same application. And I'm pretty sure they weren't, but it's been a while.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions?
Yeah. So on the same line, like what about, I never worked, so maybe I may be thinking wrong, but what about like styling? Because probably you also have styling that is the same in each of the
Right.
of the microphones.
So,
Is there a
yeah.
way to share it or to make it
Yeah.
coordinated?
So actually a fun thing about this, so as I said, one of the plugins that I'm using for Vite is CSS Inject. So in CSS Inject JS or something like that. So it injects the CSS through the bundle, right? So as you can see here, this one is actually a Tailwind one, right? And if you scroll down, you will, not in this one, so you will see that I have P1 here, right? But if I scroll down a bit more, I will find P1 again. And this is because there's two micro frontends that are using Tailwind, right? And this might be a disadvantage of Tailwind in this regard, because since the class names are what defines the style, and since the CSS is coming from multiple applications, well, you basically have twice the CSS for what you actually needed. And I mean, it's not that bad. It's not like awful, but it does Tailwind does output a big chunk. In this case, in this specific case, it's actually much bigger than the application code in the bundle. So you have to also be careful with if any of the teams override any Tailwind classes, right? But obviously, if you're working directly with CSS or with something that outputs CSS directly, yeah, you have to be careful still with the classes, right? With the class names. Imagine if you use the same class name across two components and the CSS is loaded. Then you have to be like, you have to trust that they were specific enough in the CSS selector, right? So yeah, it's hard to work with, but again, it needs guidelines from the parent and from whoever is orchestrating it. Nice question, though. Thanks.
Also following up on this exact same issue, does it also happen with the other JavaScript library bundles? For instance, imagine that each one of these was like React 16, 17, 18.
Yeah.
We'll have like 3 versions of React loaded, so I would have to specify those maps like that?
Well, yeah, so yes, but at the same time, you kind of want the company to still be on the same version of things. So maybe when you're upgrading, you have like teams, let's upgrade, and it's like an initiative to upgrade.
And then that happens, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Okay, but this is an actual problem. So like the CSS thing is a problem. This also, like the bundle is also a problem.
There's a lot of problems around micro frontends, and I want everyone to be very aware of that. but the end goal or the end conclusion is that this is not at all for everyone. This is for companies that, like Airbnb, like if they have, like, they must have a lot of people just working on search. They have a lot of people working just on checkout. Maybe they have a micro frontend just for a single button, just because they have the capacity for it, or they want to over-engineer because they can, right? And I mean, this is for those who can over-engineer because they can, right?
Also, I don't know nothing about Astro, but is it based in any other framework? Is it like a React-based
Astro?
framework? Yeah.
No, it's, how do I put it? It bundles to, if you're working directly with Astro and you do not work with these, client-only directives that I showed for those components, it actually bundles all to HTML. So this Astro is, they sell themselves, and they're content-focused. Because it actually works with, basically it renders to HTML. So it guarantees, if you're working correctly with it, all frameworks have escape hatches that allow you to be creating a bad application, but Astro kind of helps you a bit for content-specific pages, apps.
So Astro will try to remove the JavaScript as much as they can.
Yeah. But we're adding it back.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, Kita, yeah.
Someone in the audience on the previous talk, we were discussing about testing and checking the analytics. this is one of the good things that micro frontends can give you. So imagine that you have your whole infrastructure deployed for Portugal, Spain, France, and you want to test specifically, okay, the search. We want to build a new search. Let's see how it goes. So you can deploy just the search for Portugal and have it running in Portugal, getting statistics, getting feedback, and keep the original search in the other regions.
Yeah.
So this is a very good case in which you can go and drive your implementation towards micro frontends. And a fun fact, actually, the IKEA site in Portugal, we are running a micro frontend approach on the client service.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I actually did not think about talking about the localization. But it helps a lot with that. And you can actually have even better analytics and maybe tighter control of what you serve to customers with that.
Okay. Yeah, I think our time's up. Yeah. So again, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Volkswagen Digital Solution, for offering the space, and I'd like to thank the YOD staff, all the speakers as well for giving their time to make tonight happen. And lastly, I want to thank all of you for coming here. This is amazing turnout, and the discussions were great. QA was great, So yeah, so always believe in the principle of mastering the best of what other people have figured out. And with that, thank you for coming. Okay. And now we have more beers and more foods. Please finish them. Yeah.